What is going on, everyone? This is Miles Dompier, and welcome to the 95th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined for the first time by Asa GreenRiver. Asa, how you doing on this fine Saturday, my dude?
I'm good. We were just talking about it. I'm a little bit emotional. Happy birthday, baby girl. Today is my daughter Violet's first birthday. Other than being an emotional father, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. I had to wear my original Xbox hoodie.
Represent.
Love Xbox. Very happy to be a part of Xbox Chaturdays. Thank you, Miles, for having me.
Absolutely. I know we were talking before the show, and when you mentioned it was your daughter's first birthday, I was like, whoa, you're making time on that day on Big Numero Uno. So appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you hanging out. And we have a lot to talk about this week. It's been a week in gaming. If you've been following the old Xbox discourse, there's been a lot of developments. There's been some big stuff regarding Activision, Blizzard, and King. We're coming down to the wire. Things are getting hot and heavy on that front. We're going to be talking about Xbox Game Pass killing or cannibalizing game sales. We're going to be talking about Wanted Dead. We're going to be talking about Wild Hearts and so much more. But before we get into all of that, you know, the old hazing ritual on Xbox Chaturdays is I got to ask you three critical, important questions here.
Go for it.
And that's,
okay,
let everyone know who you are, where they can find you, and most importantly, why you love gaming.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So first off, number one, my name is Asa GreenRiver. I create content under the guise of Borderline Entertainment. So you can go to youtube.com/Borderline Entertainment, twitch.tv/Borderline Entertainment, and you can find amazing content there as well as podcast services. I was just telling Miles, this is my comeback year. I took about a year off due to a new baby, a new job, changes in life. So this is part of that world tour right now. So you can go find the content there. I stream once a week right now. I also brought back my show called The Wrap Up. That's also coming once a week. And then Game Chat, the video game variety show, will also be coming back this year, but as a monthly format. So content-wise, that's who I am. I also work for Qualcomm and Snapdragon as their global community manager. So for those, I do see some Snapdragon insiders in the chat. So happy to see you all here. Shout out Snapdragon insiders. Please join that program. Amazing people. But no 8 Gen 2 talk today. I saw somebody try.
Give us the juice, Asa. What's up? Where's all the meaty Snapdragon deeds?
I'm here for Asa and for Borderline Entertainment, my content.
Respect.
Thank you. So that was a long-winded number one. Number two, I guess I already kind of answered, where can you find me? You can go to those sites for BLE, and that's what I shorthand for Borderline Entertainment. But for me, myself, at AGreenRiver07 on Twitter. Honestly, that's the best place to find me. And why do I love video games, right? That was number three. Okay.
That's the one.
I feel like I was born into it. I mean, my very first game was Legend of Zelda, that golden cartridge for the NES.
Ooh.
My son's name is Link, so let that lineage live through. So gaming is always been there. I mean, from the time that I was a very, very young child, sitting and trying to fumble my way through a game, or sitting and watching my older brothers play, to now where I'm trying to my kids are really young, but I'm still like, all right, guys, here's a controller. This is what you're gonna do. Gaming has and always will be in my blood, and it is my aside from my family, my one true passion. I love gaming.
Yeah, I love hearing people's introductory stories into gaming. You and I share a similar one. Mine wasn't the original Zelda, but the first game I ever played was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I remember that experience so vividly, and just being so enamored by the possibility of this game world and being empowered to explore at my leisure. And just, it was an experience that stuck with me forever. And much like you, from that moment on, I was in. I was all in. If this is what video games are, I'm here for the ride. So love that.
Yes.
Love that one of your children's name is Link. That is so cool. So dope. And I appreciate that, man. Some quick housekeeping before we get into the show proper today. channel memberships are now live. Excited about that. Want to give a quick shout out to the people who've supported so far. Patrick, VSimco, Synodex, Anthony, Hargeet Chani, Nick W, and Assassin. Appreciate you. We're going to be planning some fun stuff with that. You also get some cool perks as well. And then I also want to give everyone a quick heads up that Tier Throwdown, if you didn't catch the first episode with Rand Al Thor 19, where we ranked every original Xbox title or every original Xbox exclusive, I have a couple more of those in the works with some rad guests as well. So we're going to be doing Mario, we're going to be doing every Zelda, and we're going to be doing every Resident Evil. So I have some experts from each of those categories coming on with me. So if you haven't checked out that first episode, watch that and get ready for something new. And now, let's get into it. And let's start with something a little fun here. Because there's a lot of more serious topics to talk about. There's a lot of controversial topics to get into today. But I want to start with a fun crossover that popped up this week when Sea of Thieves did their latest monthly newsletter. This video that breaks down everything coming to Sea of Thieves, all of the updates, and they announced another collaboration with Halo. Previously, there was a ship livery in Halo where you could basically, or in Sea of Thieves, where you could customize your ship to look like it's from the Halo universe. Now, they are going one step further, and they are adding cosmetics. They are adding the plasma sword as a cutlass, which looks so dope. Needler pistol, the Master Chief kind of pirate mask. So it's just really furthering this idea that Sea of Thieves embraces all of the Xbox IP in a way that no other Xbox team really does. And that's one thing I love about Sea of Thieves. So are you a big Sea of Thieves fan? Do you play frequently? Does this do anything for you?
I'll tell you what this does for me is it pulls me back in. So I haven't played a lot of Sea of Thieves recently. I played the alpha, a lot of the early builds. And then when the game officially came out, I was probably put too many hours into it. And so every once in a while now I'll come back for like these content drops. Like the last one I came in for was Pirates of the Caribbean. And so this is another one that's like, I saw that trailer. Like I want all of that. Like this is going to pull me in. I'm bummed that the last time that they did this crossover, it was like you had 4 days to log in to get the ship and all the customizations
that's right.
free. And I couldn't tell if this was like going to be the same sort of thing, but I absolutely will be jumping back in for this. I didn't get my UNSC ship, but I will get my, I can't remember. I'm not a fake fan, I promise. What was it? The Brute faction in Halo Infinite. I'm having the biggest brain.
Oh, the Banished.
Yeah. I'm gonna get my Banished ship. And all the other cosmetics. I wish I could have both. But yes, that's what it does for me. Is this is one of those things that, all right, I guess I'm going to be playing Sea of Thieves for a solid 3-day weekend.
That's
nonstop.
Exactly. Yeah. We've seen Fortnite kind of dominate the crossover space. And we've seen it time and time again where you have people who haven't played Fortnite, had no interest in playing Fortnite, and they're like, oh, damn, Goku's in Fortnite? Guess I'm booting that up. Yeah. And so there is this power. As much as I think some people maybe are sick of crossovers or don't really care about them, there is weight and excitement around that. So now you're going to be able to have the UNSC versus the Banished ship out in the world. You're going to be able to have a cutlass that looks like an energy sword, and that is so damn cool. And as I touched on previously, I love when Xbox teams embrace Xbox, because we see Nintendo do it a lot. We see PlayStation do it a lot. And Xbox, as much as they are the new kid on the block in some ways, they've been around for a hot minute. So I want to see them embrace that, and I want to see them do more crossovers. So a fun question for you and everyone, tuning in, hanging out with us is, what's your dream Xbox crossover? What is it? What's it look like?
I have been dreaming of this since 20 years ago that Xbox came out, because people say what they want. I know that they're in a weird spot right now, but Xbox has mascots. Like it has tentpole games in studios. And the fact that we haven't had even like PlayStation All-Stars, I don't care what anybody says, was an amazing game. They took that idea of Smash Brothers and put their own spin on it, and it boggles my mind that Xbox hasn't done that yet. My dream crossover is like a whole pantheon of like Mario style games, because like you have Mario Party, Super Smash, Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. Do that framework, but Xbox. I want Xbox Golf. I want Xbox Tennis. I want Xbox Party. I like. I think Fortnite does great at like pulling in all these other brands, but it's to the point now for me that it's a little bit ad nauseum. Because I feel that pressure of, well, now I got to drop another $30 for a skin that I'm going to use maybe for 10 seconds. But if you were to get all of get Marcus Phoenix, get Cortana, get Banjo Kazooie, get what's his name from Crimson Skies, and they're all playing like a board Mario Party. I try not to say Mario Party, but like a board game style game, that would be incredible. That could be an entire franchise. Why hasn't that happened?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Xbox has dipped their toes in. You got Fusion Frenzy just sitting there dead. Just dead franchise. Just bring back Fusion Frenzy and make it Xbox mascots.
Yes.
It's that simple. You
literally
customize some drip, give us some unlocks, let us unlock new characters, new outfits for these established mascots. Boom! Where's the platform fighter, all right? Where's the Xbox Smash Bros. Ripoff, all right? I know PlayStation tried it. I enjoyed it. Had some great characters. Where's the Xbox version, all right? You got this stable of teams, you got this stable of IP, and you're not going to do a platform fighter? We've seen it kind of with Killer Instinct. Like, they've put Rash in there. They've put Ram from Gears of War in there. And that was hella cool. That was so damn cool. And then, that's it. All right, that's all you get. You get a taste of what could be. And that's, frankly, not enough for me.
If multiverses is going to be a thing, and if that is going to succeed, Microsoft, take a page out of the playbook and do it yourself. I know that you could execute and do it so much better. No offense to those who work on multiverses.
But exactly, when multiverses was exploding, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, Xbox, come on, this would be such an easy. I mean, I want to say easy. Game development's not easy, but that would be such a big PR win for everyone. Everyone would be excited about that, regardless of, if you're an Xbox fan or a PlayStation fan or a Nintendo fan. If you just have all of these storied, celebrated mascots together, that's going to have some interest and that's going to have some traction. So no matter where you play or what you want to play on, you're going to be interested. You're going to be interested in seeing Master Chief fight Frank West from Dead Rising. All right, that's got some pull. All right, I don't care where you're at. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't think you can be excited about anything.
Let's take the nugget of what you just said. I don't care where you're at. Their whole thing right now is we're putting Xbox on every platform.
Yeah.
Think of the cash cow if they had this platform fighter. You're playing it on a Samsung fridge. You're playing it on your Fire TV, whatever. I'm on my Xbox. Someone else is on their Snapdragon powered cell phone using a backbone.
Little plug there,
But whatever it is, you could play this on any device. It would sell so well.
Yes,
it would sell so well.
Come on! I also see Piotr. Sorry if I butchered
Peter.
It. Peter. Says bring back 1v100 with Xbox avatars. Yes, 1v100.
Yeah.
Such as you could, especially with them, like you said, being everywhere, being on your phone, being on your computer, being on your console. 1 versus 100 now would work better than it ever could have back on the Xbox 360. And the fact that they haven't brought it back already is staggering. A weekly Xbox game show where you can get the entire community involved. I mean, come on. That's, again, I know these things are complicated. You need to find the right teams. You need to have the budget, blah, blah, blah. But, Xbox does have a little bit of a problem when it comes to nurturing some of its IP. They do a lot of IP once, and they say, that was cool, everyone loved it, we're never going to touch it again, ever. And people say, why?
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. It was unanimously loved. Why on earth are you just leaving it to die? And I would say PlayStation and Nintendo have done a better job of kind of looking at things that people love and say, all right, we can do that again.
Nobody cares about Game & Watch. No.
Yeah, but they brought it back anyway.
You know who I do care about? Blinks the cat.
Oh,
bring back Blinks the cat. And I will lose my freaking mind, Xbox. Come on.
Blinks the cat. Yeah, that's, I've seen people talk about Blinks the cat, Brute Force. I'm partial to Phantom Dust. They almost gave it to us. They said, you know what, we're doing a reboot. And then they said, you know what? Nah, actually, we're canceling that reboot. Sorry, guys. Almost gave you what you wanted, but we couldn't stick the landing. No. Yeah. So, yes, I'm with you. Give us the Mario or the Nintendo template and just give us all of these mascot games.
Yes.
Xbox needs family stuff. And I know not all of their mascots are family friendly, but if
No,
you got
they're
a
not.
board party game, it's like the Disney Pixar approach. It's fun for the whole family. You got the
Yes.
kid who's excited by the bright colors, and then you get the dad who's like, hell yeah, Marcus Phoenix is in this. And everyone wins. Everyone's happy, all right?
I got my kids a ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of D&D. And it's showing like a beholder, which when you're playing D&D, a beholder is a terrifying creature, but they made it look okay for kids.
Yeah. Come on.
General Ram can look okay for kids.
Exactly. Gears
come
Pop.
on.
Ever heard of Gears Pop? I know a lot of people haven't, but Gears Pop was that
Gears
idea.
Pop.
A cutesy take, and that's maybe not the best example of them.
But the kids would love it. That's what it is.
Yes, the kids would love it. All right. So I appreciate everyone hanging out, tuning in. If you are enjoying the show, hit the like button, share it out. We are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we got to talk about Redfall. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know Redfall is one of my most anticipated games. If there's two things in this world that I love more than most, it's co-op and it's horror. And Redfall is a co-op horror shooter with RPG elements. Let's go. From Arcane, masters of player agency. Yes. They have a track record of games that people love. Sure, their games haven't always sold incredibly well, but they're always critically beloved. They have a cult following, and this kind of seems like their foray into something bigger and a more approachable space. And I'm ready. I'm so excited for it.
Dude,
so
me too.
We've talked previously about the always online concerns. When they announced this was going to be an always online game, some people were upset, and we talked about it's okay that people are upset. They haven't really justified why this is an always online game. There was some controversy surrounding that. And then this week, it's been kind of a roller coaster of, hot, passionate takes before the dust has settled. So Bethesda updated the support page for Redfall, and there was a line that said, the physical Xbox copies of Redfall are Xbox Play Anywhere codes, which can be played on both the Xbox Series X and S and the Microsoft Xbox app on PC. So when outlets saw this line and it popped up on Reddit, people said, okay, so you don't actually get the disc. You're only getting a game code with the physical version of Redfall. And so people wrote that story and made the rounds. People were mad. And people were saying, yo, Microsoft, I thought you were about game preservation. Why aren't you giving us a physical disc? And then, from the top ropes, a contender I wasn't expecting to come into the conversation was Gamefly. Because somebody tagged Gamefly on Twitter and said, hey, if the game code isn't with the physical version, why are you going to be renting this game, Gamefly? And so Gamefly is like, it is. There's going to be a disc in here. We are going to be renting Redfall. And so, that discredited some of the reporting. And then Bethesda officially updated the support page saying, yes, there will be a disc included with the physical copy of Redfall. So it isn't just a code. It is a disc. And then people are now asking, okay, well, is the game actually on the disc, or is it just you put the disc in and that triggers a download? The typical stuff, which has sparked a lot of conversations about game preservation. And so I think that is, an important topic to touch on, and it's one that comes up a lot as we move towards this digital-only future. I'm at this point, I haven't put a single disc in the disk drive of my Series X. Not once. Not once. The PS5, I have the digital edition. Even when I bought my Switch, the only reason I have a physical copy of any game on Switch is because I bought the collector's edition of Breath of the Wild for the sick carrying case. So I have almost no physical games. I have a shelf over here on my side just packed with original Xbox 360, and I kind of miss the days of going to the store, seeing a sick-ass cover for a game and buying it. But also, there are games that I own a disc version of on Xbox One, Dead Rising, Halo Master Chief Collection, Evolve, etc., where I have literally just rebought the digital version because I didn't want to go get up and put the disc in. So I'm part of the problem in some ways. So I have to ask, obviously the Redfall situation has been, a little dramatic in a lot of ways, but if Redfall is just the disc only, if the Redfall game disc is only just an access code for the game, is that a problem for you?
Yes. I think it holds a dangerous precedent. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to that 2013 Xbox, Microsoft, like thinking back to that E3 where they're talking about DRM and they're going the complete other direction of being power to the players, kind of, making players feel like they're not going to have the rug pulled under them. Making this shift to where the disc essentially is just authenticating your ability to use that code. I don't like that. All I think for many reasons I don't like that, but one in particular that I'm thinking specifically, and I think that this is a more widespread commonality, is internet access is, while it seems like it is just a common thing for people to have, there are many who can't afford high-speed internet. I think about like my indigenous communities. I think about people on reservations who some of them don't even have internet, like they don't have wireless. So if this has to be an always online game where the disc again just authenticates your ability to use the code of the downloaded game, like it's also way too convoluted. Like there are so many people who are not going to be able to play this, and I think that is where the conversation, I feel like that conversation should be happening more. But it's more just like outrage of like, why is there no disc in there? Because I am all about like the preservation aspect as well. I've become more of a collector in my eldish age. And so having that physical copy is important to me. I also have done the thing where I've got so many boxes and discs over there, but as soon as it's on sale, I'll buy that digital version so I don't have to put the disc in. So I know I'm also part of that problem, but I do think it sets a little bit of a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, obviously convenience for the average person is more important than anything else. We've seen it with the Switch. You know, as much as us in the hardcore space will clown on the performance of the Switch, that convenience factor is the main reason it's such a dominating force in the industry. And the reason that people, regardless of performance, will play games and prefer to play games on Switch just for that flexibility. So that is a huge factor here. We are already seeing publishers skip physical releases for games. We're seeing it from Capcom, and we're going to be seeing it more and more. It's just going to become more and more common, especially for re-releases and remasters. Like certain platforms, like I think the Switch in particular, there's data that suggests that Nintendo players are more willing to buy a physical version of a game. But Xbox has data that shows only a small fraction. Like I think it's under 20% is the latest data, that less than 20% of people buy physical media. So when you're justifying the spreadsheets and you're looking at all the numbers for all of this, do you really say, all right, we're going to do this for less than 20%? Because Xbox has kind of been, training its users to move to digital because it's more convenient for them. They make greater money. They don't have to print the discs. You don't have to deal with the packaging. In this case, when it comes to these instances of just putting the disc in and the disc is just an authenticator in a lot of cases, that is extra strange because you're paying for the case, you're paying for the plastic, you're paying to have the disc printed, but you're not actually going to utilize the disc. And that to me seems like a weird, strange decision outside of the marketing that comes along with that, because the retail component, I think, is the only reason that those situations exist. Regardless of whether or not it has the physical game in it, you still want to have your game on the store shelves at Target, at Walmart, or wherever, so that the person who's not on Twitter or in the gaming conversations constantly is aware of that. So I think that is the reason we see that. But when I ask myself whether or not that's a problem, I'm very conflicted, because I do agree. I think video game preservation is important, and I do want to be able to ensure I have access to these games. But really, I think these publishers and companies need to do a better job of preserving, digital media. Because that's the problem. Is some people say, all right, well, I buy physical because I always have that, and that cannot be taken away from me. And so in this instance, if this is just an authentication code, you don't own anything. And these publishers can take it from you at any moment for any reason. And that's kind of where I have a problem, is that customers right now, when it comes to digital purchases, we are not empowered because of the convenience. We are basically being sold the convenience alone and then stripped of the rights of ownership. And I think that is a problem. And I think a lot of publishers need to be better about guaranteeing access. Obviously, when it comes to online games, online only, that's just the nature of the beast. Those servers are never going to go in perpetuity, and so that's just kind of the experience. But when it comes to the standalone single player experiences that get delisted or taken away or pulled, there needs to be some kind of protection in place for the average person, because we saw a bunch of developers and publishers jump on board the NFT train trying to talk about, oh, this is good for you because you own it and you can sell it and trade it. No, that's good for you, all right? Because if this was good for us and you cared about what was good for us, you would let me go on the Xbox marketplace and sell the games that I own or give the games that I own to someone else. You're not doing that. And if you're chasing NFTs but not doing that, that shows this isn't about me, all right? Because if it was about me, you would be empowering me a lot more.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up, man, so many really good points. And one in particular that you made me think about is, let's just say hypothetically, I don't think this is going to be the case because I still think the game looks great. Let's say hypothetically Redfall tanks and it doesn't do well.
Don't you dare.
I know.
Don't.
Huge hypothetical here. Because I think about games like Marvel's Avengers. Marvel's Avengers did not do well. I am still a big Marvel's Avengers player, but now seeing that they're cutting their losses and they're pulling away and moving on to the next project. And so what happens to those always online games that don't do well? So what if they go through this entire process and now everybody who has bought this code, now you've forced this game to be always online, and in 5-6 years, you end up just pulling the plug on it? Because, I mean, that's also been known to happen plenty of times. Like, that's just another thing that adds to this whole argument of it being always online and the fact that we don't own any of these digital games. So, yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there, too.
Yeah, because I own a physical copy of Evolve, y'all. I own the Ultimate Edition physical copy of Evolve. Guess what I can do with that disc?
Look at it.
I can look at the case. It has a cool embossed case. It's got the claw that has the texture, so I can pick up that disc. I can rub the cover. But that's the only entertainment that I get out of my physical edition of Evolve. So it's inevitable, this digital future. I know I see people oversimplify it and say, well, I'm just going to buy physical. That ain't going to cut it, all right? Because there's going to be a lot of games that you just cannot buy physical. So we need some other solutions, and I hope as we get towards this digital-only future that there are some options, because otherwise it is going to be a case of, oh, well, I had fun with it at the time, and such is life. They took my access away, and that is what it is. And for some people, I think that's fine. As we move on as we look at like Netflix, we look at Spotify, as we look at all these streaming services and subscription services, even going to the movies, I think is a comparable, scenario, because you go to the movies, you pay a bunch of money. You don't own that. You own the memories, though, bro. You own the experience, bro. And that is priceless. Okay, you can't put a price on the experience and the memories and bonds that you made with your friends along the way. And maybe, maybe, that's enough. So I understand where people are coming from. I try not to downplay the physical only purists, and I certainly, appreciate game preservation. And situations like this, I think, bring up some interesting conversations when you have quotes from Phil Spencer talking about game preservation being important, and then you have a weird series of developments where there's like maybe they're delisting or taking down the Xbox 360 marketplace. That seems up in the air right now. And then you have a situation where maybe Redfall isn't going to be, the physical disc isn't there. Then people look at that and say, okay, well, are you about game preservation or not? And I think they're about game preservation up until the point where they're not making money. So they are a business after all. So
yes, they are.
Okay. We touched on my second question, which I guess we can revisit it definitively. What's your stance on always online requirements for video games?
Hate
it.
Hate it.
What about Sea of Thieves? That needs it.
I know it needs it, but I also hate it because I think about when I jumped back in for, I talk about jump back in for Pirates of the Caribbean. That was not a good experience. because there were so many other players just screwing me over as I'm in the
Just
high seas
getting
trying to enjoy.
griefed.
Like, that game is one of those that it has a good story, and I think that it would be great if it had a version that allowed you to play offline, so I could just enjoy it and not have to worry about other players getting at me. Or even like something like, look at Elden Ring. Like, you've got players, you can kind of see their ghosts running around, so it's this weird pseudo, I see other players playing, but they don't really affect my game unless you do the whole invading thing. But if that were to turn off, I would maybe miss it a little bit, but it also is not going to directly like impact my ability to play the game.
I think that's a great comparison because Elden Ring, the multiplayer is additive.
Yes.
A lot of people,
Yeah.
When Redfall came out and it was going to be a co-op shooter, a lot of people had concerns because a lot of Arcane stuff has been single player. And so they've made it a point to stress the fact that you can play this game solo in its entirety. They've made a really big point to stress that. And that has made the online only situation a lot more interesting because when it comes to Sea of Thieves, I know there are fundamental reasons that it is online only. I know how the cloud impacts the actual gameplay. I know that islands and environments and actions are rendered through the cloud. So there are fundamental things happening server side that would not be able to happen on your console. And so that is the reason in that particular instance it is always online. And if if Redfall is similar, if there are fundamental gameplay decisions and cool world events and cool instances happening because of its online connection, then I'm more understanding. But if there is nothing like that and it is simply just an online check, that's where I have a problem because then you're just doing it for arbitrary reasons that don't enrich the player experience. You're just basically limiting who can play the game, and I think that's strange. So we don't know. They haven't talked about what the always online stuff means for Redfall. And I think that's why people are kind of up in arms about the fact that it exists. Because again, if there is a fundamental gameplay reason, then so be it.
Tell me why.
I'm excited to see, games and the industry pushed forward with those kind of features and those kind of evolutions. But you got to explain to the player why that is, other than saying it's always online, because that's not enough for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into a couple juicier topics here, all right? Because it's been a week, and the biggest conversation this week, I think, revolves around Xbox Game Pass. If you've been online, you have seen a lot of conversations, a lot of passionate takes on Xbox Game Pass. And as part of the ongoing Activision Blizzard King acquisition, Microsoft has sent some statements to the CMA regarding their concerns surrounding Game Pass specifically. And the statements that Microsoft provided to the CMA seem to suggest that Game Pass is, not as great and as flawless as they've made it out to be in the past. And again, before we talk about this, I do want to stress that all of these legal documents from both PlayStation and Sony, they're both trying to downplay the reality of the deal and what this means for their business and what it means for the industry. So Microsoft dropping these statements to the CMA is because they want the deal to go through. Right? And they're trying to make Game Pass seem like it's not a threat to anyone because that's in their best legal interest. But basically, Microsoft said that an internal analysis shows a redacted % decline in base sales 12 months following their addition on Game Pass. So we've seen articles and we've seen outlets talk about how Xbox Game Pass, quote, cannibalizes game sales. And yeah, I've seen people arguing over the semantics here about the 12-month, and some people are saying that, oh, it's 12 months, that means after 12 months sales drop, and oh, that's to be expected. But no, I think the wording here is saying that from the time a game is added to Xbox Game Pass for 12 months after that, within that period, that there is a hit to the game's sales. So obviously there's a whole lot to unpack with this statement here. There's a lot of passionate takes about this. So let's start with the biggest question. Do you think it's surprising that Microsoft has dropped a statement that shows and says that adding a game to Game Pass reduces the game's sales, given the fact that folks like Phil Spencer have talked about instances where it's actually boosted game sales in the past.
It's not surprising. I have been waiting for this from the beginning. Game Pass is great. I have Game Pass Ultimate. I use it all the time. But since Game Pass has come out, the amount of Xbox games that I have purchased has gone to almost zero. I check to see if it's coming to Game Pass, and if it's not coming to Game Pass, then I'm waiting for a sale maybe after 6 months to a year. So this makes complete sense, and I know I'm not alone in that. It's not going anywhere because they changed the game when it came to the video game industry with this service. I mean, you look at like PlayStation with their PlayStation Essentials and whatever, and their terrible naming convention, but like they're now jumping into it, and Nintendo when they keep on releasing like the different NES and SNES for Nintendo Online, like this isn't like Game Pass is never going to leave, but I do think they need to restructure it because people they're not buying games. They're just not. Like this is great for people who have a fixed income, but they still want to be able to enjoy games. This is perfect for that. But for the other side of it, for the developers that like they need those sales, like they need to get a return on that investment. I don't think it's as great as what they were trying to say at the beginning. Now, I would imagine for an indie developer, if there is some sort of I don't know the whole process on how they were to get onto Game Pass, but if I'm thinking of it correctly, and please let me know in the chat or the comments, if I'm Xbox and I'm approaching a small indie game like Unsen Master, and I'm like, hey, Unsen Master, we're going to pay you $50,000 and we're going to put your game on Game Pass. So it's like trying to make up for what some of the sales would have been, but now we're going to be pushing it out to all these other people. Even doing that is not going to make up for the sales. I'm a huge Halo fan. I still have not purchased Halo Infinite. And I think there is this, like, I don't want to compare the services too much, but I think like what PlayStation does really well with theirs is they have game trials, right? So like you can download, it's actually the full game, and you can play for like a set number of hours that game. And you'll get the trophies, you'll get all of the game save data. But then like once that trial's up, it's like, well, shoot, now I got to buy the game. And I'm going to tell you right now, every game that I've done a game trial on, I've ended up buying the game. And so that's an instance where I feel like the service has helped some of those game sales. If I was Phil Spencer, if I was Xbox, Microsoft, that's the direction I would be moving for some of these bigger games. Like, just being honest. And I know that's not what people want because people, especially gamers, hate change. Like they're also going to see a price hike. I'm calling it right now. Like, we already have the $14.99 for Ultimate. There's no way they're going to be able to keep that pricing structure, especially after announcing something like this. Like, that price is going to have to go up, but they also need to make some shifts. So then they're not losing money on these game sales, because I feel like they, in the long run, might make more on Game Pass, but those game sales are still part of that bottom line for their fiscal year.
Yeah, there's a lot of, when we look at Game Pass, and we touched on this already. I see Jason in the chat saying, yeah, obviously this is to try to downplay Game Pass. They're speaking to the regulators in a way that makes it seem like Game Pass is not a threat to anyone. But really, Game Pass is fundamentally shaking up the distribution model of the games industry in the same way that we've seen Netflix do it, the same way we've seen Spotify do it. So obviously, yeah, when we look at first-party games in particular, when we look at first-party Xbox games, it's understandable that their first-party games are selling less copies. The bigger question is going to be, does that really matter? If you're building a platform that is designed to change habits and change the way that people engage with games, if you're selling less physical copies of a game on your platform, that doesn't matter as much if you are getting people to invest in that platform. If you're getting people to subscribe for Xbox Game Pass and they are playing a lot of stuff on Xbox Game Pass, guess what? All those third-party games that come to the platform, if their habits have already shifted to them playing on Xbox, they're going to buy those games on Xbox. And guess what? Microsoft is going to get money from those third-party game sales because they are a platform holder. And that is what Microsoft is ultimately trying to do with Xbox Game Pass. So we see people talk about, like, oh no, their games are selling less. That doesn't really matter in the long term for them, because what they're trying to do is get undeniable experiences that people want to play. They get people subscribed to the ecosystem and onboard them into Xbox. And if they are happy with that experience, the idea and the goal would be that you would keep them on that experience. You would, especially when we look at Call of Duty, when we look at some of the other big driving factors, if you can change someone's habits, as you just said, people don't like change, and it's an uphill battle to get people to change. And once they do change, trying to get them to go back to the way things were before, that is going to be huge. So Microsoft, I don't see them reverting to a non-day and date model for their first party stuff.
No.
But I just want to make sure, and I think there are some legitimate questions about, is this good for developers? Is this good for the industry as a whole? Because we've seen with Spotify, a lot of artists came out and said, this sucks for me, dude. This is horrible. I'm making so much less money. I'm being exploited, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's fair. That does suck for these creatives. We know people are paid to put their games in Game Pass. So I think that automatically alleviates the, okay, it sold less. Well, if you got a big bag of money up front, it doesn't really matter for you as the developer. If it sold less, if people are playing the game and you got paid, I think that's kind of a win-win. And I think that's, until we start seeing developers come out and say, this was bad for me, and maybe there are NDAs in place that make that tough. But so far, we haven't seen anyone come out and speak against Game Pass. We've only really seen the opposite, especially on the indie front. There's a lot of indie developers who are like, more people played my game than I ever would have imagined. And I got this nice cushion to help pay for the development costs up front. We see PlayStation do that all the time when it comes to assisting with publishing. They do a lot of exclusive deals with indie developers. And what that exclusive deal is, hey, we are going to pay to market your game and we're going to pay to publish your game. And that's going to give you the funds to get this game across the finish line. I think that's fundamentally fine. And that's the nature of the beast in a lot of ways. So I guess I'll pose the question to you and the chat. Do you think this indicates any sort of long-term problems for Game Pass when we see comments like this brought up?
Yeah, I think I agree with Herbie in the chat. I do think it's a case-by-case basis. Like I said, I don't think that this poses a problem for Game Pass as a service. It's not going anywhere. In that case-by-case basis, like I said, I think for indie devs, the deal of Game Pass is pretty sweet. I think a lot of like those big time, like those big AAA games, are they really making in that deal what they would have made from all of these $70 game purchases? So from a developer, that's where I think that there might be the issues. The service is not going anywhere, and the convenience of Game Pass is still going to be great and is not going to change for the consumer.
Yeah, it's fundamentally changed. Microsoft at this point, regardless of how they're doing financially with it, they can't revert.
Right. There's no going back.
No, there's no going back. You cannot go back. I've seen people say, "Oh, they're going to change the model." If you change the entire selling point of the business model you established, guess what? People aren't going to be excited about it anymore. If you spent years selling people on first-party games coming day and date in Game Pass and then say, "Oh, we're not doing that anymore," you're going to lose everyone who was on board with that. And people are not going to get excited about your next foray into the space. So at this point, regardless of how they're doing financially, and they seem to suggest that they're doing okay, they don't get to go back. But I think when it comes to the health of the industry and the compensation, when I see the publishers like Capcom time and time again go back to the well and put stuff in like Monster Hunter Rise day and date on the platform, and Monster Hunter World, and a bunch of Resident Evil games, to me that says the compensation must be good. The compensation must be adequate and the performance must be good. Otherwise, Capcom wouldn't bother, because they don't really need to bother. Their games are selling well regardless. So it shows me that at least for some of those bigger publishers, the compensations must be good enough.
Although, question for you is, do you think, not to be a negative person, to play more devil's advocate, do you think it's more of a safety net? As we saw, like, I believe it, Tears of the Kingdom, I believe, is going to be close to $70. And then Microsoft talked about how they're going to up the price of their games. And of course, with the gaming community, there was a lot of blowback. Do you think even those big time developers now look at Game Pass as a safety net of, well, shoot, like nobody's going to want to pay $70 for my game. Like we might end up getting more revenue if we just put it on Game Pass. Like, do you think there is some of that mentality?
I really
within
do.
the developer
I
space?
do totally agree that it is definitely case by case, but I'll use Outriders as an example. Outriders was a very last minute addition to Game Pass. That announcement came like 1 week before the launch of that game. And that tells me that Square Enix was very concerned about the pre-order numbers of Outriders, and Microsoft approached them, or they approached Microsoft and said, hey, this is a co-op game. Can we talk about putting it in Game Pass? And I think that was to alleviate the fact that maybe it wasn't going to sell that well. And we know it didn't sell all that well. It did have great numbers in terms of like player count because of Game Pass, and that boosted its kind of conversation for that launch period. But I think it's safe to say that game would not have performed exceptionally well on sales alone. So I do think as we look at the future and as we look at different scopes and scales for release, I do think there are going to be publishers who talk to Microsoft and say, hey, we want to ensure this game does well. Here's what we're working on. Is this a good fit? And as the competition becomes more fierce, I think we will see games that are a little scared. Because, yeah, $70 is a lot. $70 is a big ask. $60 is a big ask, if we're being real. And there's a lot of games coming out. And realistically, much like we've seen with movies and music, the market will become very saturated, and trying to stand out in that market will become incredibly difficult, and people are going to be less willing to give you $60-$70. So you're going to need some way to stand out. You're going to need some way to guarantee success. If you got a cool game that maybe isn't going to sell 5 million copies at $60 or $70, I think an outlet like Game Pass is a viable option to help you ensure some level of success.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that's unfair. I don't have data that shows these conversations have happened for sure, but I would not be surprised at all if we got some insights that said, yeah, I was concerned about my game's performance, so I put it in Game Pass. And I think Outriders is the biggest example we've seen so far, and maybe potentially Rainbow Six Extraction as well. That was another quote-unquote AAA game that launched day and date in Game Pass. That maybe wouldn't have done huge numbers otherwise. So, I don't know. Again, I know you're playing devil's advocate, but I think there's, maybe some nuggets worth diving into there. And we all want the definitive answers for these kind of things, and it's just so rare that we actually get them. So we have to speculate and fill in the gaps, and I try to do my best not to fill those gaps with nonsense. But yeah, I think there's some interesting maybe truth to what you're proposing there.
Maybe, hopefully.
But another component with Game Pass that is interesting is I think Microsoft still has yet to have that big must-play game launch into Game Pass day and date. They've had great big games. Halo Infinite. They've had Gears 5. I love Gears. I've talked about how much I love Gears. Sea of Thieves. I have said that is the most important IP that Xbox has put out in the last decade. Love Sea of Thieves. A huge release, doing huge numbers right now. At launch, that wasn't the case. And so I think so far Microsoft hasn't had that big, like, holy damn, everyone in the world needs to be playing this game. And I think there's potential for Starfield to be that kind of first hit there. And that'll be a really interesting indicator to see what Game Pass can do for a launch. We've seen stuff like Forza Horizon 5 get 25 million players in a couple weeks, 20 million players, which is huge. That is astronomical, and that would not happen without Game Pass. And so I'm really curious to see what the hell a Starfield level game that is just going to be this absolute undeniable juggernaut, regardless of where you play. I'm really curious to see what that style of release with Game Pass looks like. And that'll be, I think, the true first test. I think Halo Halo was probably the first test, and they didn't.
But was it?
They didn't pass that test, but Starfield, I think, will be a very interesting case study.
Yeah, I cannot wait for Starfield.
You know, I've talked about it. I will play Starfield. I'm just skeptical because I'm not a big sci-fi guy. If this
Okay.
was Elder Scrolls, baby, let's go. I'm there
Yeah.
every day of the week. But unless there's space dragons, I'm gonna be a little skeptical.
There could be.
Exactly. If they give me some cool aliens, some weird shit, then I'm in. All right, that's all I need to be happy. I need some weird creatures that I can kill, and I'm happy. But
Fair enough.
I'm more of a fantasy guy than a sci-fi guy.
You know, we're all cut from the same cloth.
Exactly. You know.
I got a phaser in one hand and a wizard staff in the other. I know who I am.
Speak your truth, all right? Speak it. I have people mad at me because I'm not the most hyped person in the world for Starfield. I'm excited. I'm going to play it day one. I'm excited about a new Bethesda IP 100% of the time. But I've infamously gotten a lot of heat because I don't love Mass Effect. And it's not even that I dislike Mass Effect. I just don't love it. And people are like, oh my God, what? And again, it boils down to the fact that it's sci-fi. I don't know. It's just, it's not my vibe, y'all.
It's
okay. I know not
you should
all...
be criminalized for it.
Yeah, I'm villainized, okay? I'm villainized for not loving it. And I know not everyone loves horror, all right? And sure, I'll call you tasteless if you don't love horror, but that's besides the point. Okay, moving on, let's talk about the Activision Blizzard King deal. Yeah, baby, everyone's favorite topic online. I know we've joked about this on this podcast, on social media. I know we're kind of sick of talking about it a little bit, but there have been some big developments in this deal, and we're getting close to, you know, some kind of resolution. Either way, things are getting heated on this front. And there's been a lot of reports about, there's a blog that tracks jets and has come out and said that, oh my God, the Sony jet was in Washington this week. That means they're meeting with Microsoft to discuss the deal. And then you've had other people say, well, Bungie's also in that area, so couldn't they just be going to visit the studio that they own in Washington? And so there's been all of these kind of hot takes about what this all means and what it could mean. But regardless of all of that, we are getting close to this deal coming to a head. And we've seen figures like Bobby Kotick, Phil Spencer, a lot of these executives are making the rounds, talking about why this deal should, or in Sony's case, should not go through. And everyone is very passionate about that. And as we joked about earlier, both sides are saying, woe is me, man. Like, this is bad. This is bad news. If this deal doesn't go through, we can't compete. And then one side saying like, oh my God, if this deal does go through, we can't compete. What are we? And it's, again, a lot of it is just legal jargon to try to make their multi-billion-dollar business seem weak, which we know that's in both cases, that's not the reality. But that being said, both parties, PlayStation and Xbox in this case, are heavily invested in this deal. So according to a report from MLX, Microsoft is heading to Europe next week to make its case for the acquisition in Brussels. And this report claims that lawyers and executives from Microsoft, Sony, Nvidia, and more will be there. And they are calling, and some reports are calling this a last-ditch effort from Microsoft to try to appease folks in Europe. So really what it sounds like is this is going to be a closed meeting with a lot of these lawyers, and Phil Spencer's going to be there. Brad Smith is apparently going to be there, and they're going to sit down and try to hash this thing out, all right? Obviously, folks like Sony and Nvidia are going to be there to say, hey, we think this is bad, and then Microsoft is going to have to have answers for them and these regulators, because so many regulators. We have China, we have the CMA, we have EU. A lot of regulators have said, whoa, hold on, we have some concerns about this deal. And when you're Microsoft and you got billions of dollars on the table for this deal, you don't want to hear that. So you're gonna sit down, you're gonna have these meetings, and you're gonna try to make everyone happy, because they have said, you know, we will take this to court if we need to. And I think they would do that, but I guarantee you they do not want to take it to court, because that would draw this out longer. That would cost them even more money, and it would be so much easier for all parties if they can come to some kind of resolution. So, where do you stand on this whole deal? All right, let's start there. How do you feel about it? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you care about the Activision Blizzard deal and Microsoft owning them?
Um, I really resonated with what you said at the beginning, that a lot of us are sick of hearing about it.
Yeah,
I'm
baby.
like, just go one way or another at this point. I can see both sides of the fence. Right? I can see the fear of Microsoft becoming this monopoly in the gaming space. Like they own so many studios. And there's all this fear of like now with, them owning Bethesda, are we never going to see Fallout or Elder Scrolls on any other platform ever? When Skyrim next to Minecraft is one of those games that has hit every single device known to mankind. So like I get those fears of like, what does this mean for the industry and what does it mean for exclusives? From Xbox's point of view, like we talked about before, like they need more mascots. Like they just need more games. Like we talk about Starfield being like the big game that's coming to Game Pass. Like they need more of those like big games, and Blizzard Activision, like ABK, that acquisition could help with that. Do I personally care either way? Just wrap it up. You know what I mean? Like
just wrap it.
Just wrap it up,
dude.
I mean, I do think though, Microsoft and Xbox, like them taking over, like Blizzard needs a restructuring. There has been too much crap going on with them coming out over the past couple of years. The fact that Bobby's still there, and just with everything else that had happened, I think Microsoft coming in and cleaning house, like that would be great for Blizzard and their employees. But even then, like I wish the best for everybody. Get that bag, do what you got to do. Just let me keep playing my games and keep your schoolyard fights to yourself.
We're getting a lot of juicy drama that we never would get otherwise. If this deal wasn't happening, we would not have all these just really salacious comments from folks from Xbox and PlayStation about how they really feel about the competitor and how they really feel about these services and platforms that they've, publicly downplayed in the past. So we're getting a lot of information, and with any court case, it's always ugly. It's when there's money on the line, it always gets ugly, it always gets heated. Both sides are going to be very invested in the deal one way or another. When it comes to this deal for me, as a player, I say, hell yeah, I can play Diablo and other stuff on Game Pass. Let's go. That's dope. For me, as a player, I don't have to spend $70 on these games. So that's why, in this case, I say, yeah, all right, if the deal goes through, sick. That benefits me because I play on Xbox. I have an Xbox Game Pass subscription. Cool. I am going to be benefiting from this. So when I look at the deal, when I talk about the deal from a player perspective, that's where I'm at. Yeah, I want the deal to go through because that means I'm spending less money on games. Cool. When we look at the overall scope of the deal for the industry, obviously PlayStation doesn't want to lose their market dominance, and that's where their entire stance is coming from. They have spent billions of dollars on Call of Duty. They have this brand synergy with Call of Duty, and they have data that shows a huge number of people play and buy Call of Duty, and they even have data that shows people buy a PlayStation for Call of Duty alone. So they have a lot of data that shows, damn, if we lose Call of Duty, that's going to be a huge hit to our bottom line. And if you're a business, you're going to do everything in your power to stop that. So that's where they're coming from, is they don't want to lose Call of Duty. And so they're doing everything in their power to, bang the drum, be loud, get everyone riled up about how this is bad for the industry and bad for gamers, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, from a legal standpoint, there's nothing necessarily fundamentally illegal about this deal. There are still so many publishers in the space. There are so many developers in the space. There are so many games in the space being made that we're so far from calling it a monopoly. That being said, I do understand, having questions or concerns about what this could mean. Because really, when we look at the cloud gaming side, there's not really going to be anyone who can compete with Microsoft when it comes to cloud gaming outside of NVIDIA. And if NVIDIA is there showing concerns, then there's no other major competitor in the space. We've seen Amazon try, we've seen Google try, and they're huge. Amazon, they're Amazon and Google, and I know Google
Yeah.
has a ton of ton of fundamental problems with their service, but still, if you have Google coming out and saying, "Yo, we couldn't even compete," then who the hell is supposed to step up and compete in cloud gaming with Microsoft? And so there
Exactly.
are legitimate questions and concerns, and I think there is this learning curve for these regulators who aren't immersed in the gaming industry. And again, I throw the term ignorance around, and I don't mean that as an insult at all. There's nothing, when it comes to being ignorant, it just means you haven't had a chance to learn that information. So I think there is a lot of this learning process going on. And so when you have someone like Jim Ryan coming to you first and saying, "Hey, this is bad because XYZ," and you say, "Oh, damn, I didn't know that," or "I hadn't heard about that."
Hmm.
And so Microsoft is then going to have to come to the table and say, "Actually, no, it's good because of XYZ." And then they say, "Oh, damn, well, I didn't know about that." And so there's just this back and forth and this process that goes into it. And I don't think that process is bad. And as much as I'm sick of hearing about the deal, I am glad that it wasn't just like, "Oh, this deal's going through. Everyone doesn't care. Microsoft spent $70 billion, whatever. Let's move on to the next one." So,
Hmm.
as much as we all want to play games like Call of Duty, etc., on Game Pass, I am glad that there is some level of scrutiny involved when it comes to
Yeah.
somebody buying a company with thousands and thousands of employees. Um, but yeah, this deal, I'm with you. I'm ready for it to be resolved. And it
Hmm.
sounds like there's a meeting potentially. This meeting I talked about previously is supposedly going to be on February 21st. And so
Okay.
Sony has also, for the first time, kind of commented on the state of the deal and basically said that there are private conversations happening with Microsoft. So that's also positive because there was radio silence
Mhm.
from Sony for a long time. Clearly, they
Yeah.
had no interest in talking to Microsoft. They just wanted to go straight to the regulatory bodies and say, "Yo, this is bad." And so the fact that they are, coming to the table more and, talking about what could potentially resolve this deal shows that maybe there's going to be a scenario where everyone leaves this happier. Because
Yeah.
we've also had people talk about, well, if Sony is the reason this deal doesn't go through, that relationship with Activision Blizzard is going to be forever tainted. Because
Mm.
if all of the people who run Activision Blizzard wanted this deal to go through, and you're the reason that the deal doesn't go through, it's safe to say they're not going to be happy with you, and they're not going to want to work with you in any capacity. So as soon as those contracts run out with Call of Duty, etc., you think they're going to re-sign with the company that stopped this deal from going through? No, I don't think so. So there, some of it was short-sighted, but I think really they were loud up front so they could get some more bargaining power. Because like I said, Microsoft will take this to court, but Microsoft really, really doesn't want to take this to court. So,
Yeah.
boom.
Listen, as long as they don't make me testify, mom and dad, just stop fighting.
Exactly. Now, why can't you guys just do some cool crossovers together? All right. Why can't we get a
Yes.
Xbox versus PlayStation mascot fighter? Huh? How hype would that
Listen,
be?
listen, Fortnite's doing it. Just
Let's settle the console wars once and
come
for all
on.
right? Just Xbox versus PlayStation mascot fighter, all right? Let's
Take
go.
take that old Smash Bros commercial where they're in the wrestling ring. Do that.
Yeah.
Put their executives in these big costume, like character costume suits, and let them just fight it out. That's what they need to do. Just get roughing up, and you'll be fine.
I've previously joked about the only way to settle the console wars once and for all is to get Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer out at E3, have them arm wrestle. Winner is the winner of the console wars, all right? If
That's
Phil
it.
Spencer wins, the Xbox is the better platform. Sorry. It was a contest by combat. It's been proven, all right?
Yes, loser has to drop out of the game. You're done forever.
Sorry. Wrap it up. We own all of your studios and IP if you lose. That's how it works.
Winner take all. Let's just do it. Get it over with.
Super chat from Game Seeker M, who says, "Great show, Miles. Appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for everyone tuning in. If you're digging the show, smash that like button. Share it out. You know the drill. You know how it works. You know this system." Okay, speaking of Blizzard, and speaking of Blizzard being kind of a mess of a company, Blizzard has upset employees once again this week. So it came out, there were some reports that basically suggested that Blizzard was going to force people to return to office. There were some reports that
Mhm.
came out earlier this week that said, all right, Blizzard is going to make it mandatory to return to office. A lot of people got riled up about that and said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so there was a big town hall meeting, all hands meeting at Blizzard, where President Mike Ibarra touched on these issues, addressed these issues, addressed the concerns, addressed the state of the company. And boy, howdy, it sounds like from people who were there and some reports that this man was a bit combative. And people are
Mhm.
really riled up post this meeting. So this meeting did nothing to alleviate concerns, but actually just amplified all of the concerns that employees had. So let me give you a quick breakdown of what happened, according to some employees who spoke to outlets like GamesIndustry.biz this week. So Mike Ybarra did, in fact, confirm that, yes, there will be an in-office mandate beginning in April. So starting in April, you got to come back to the office. Sorry, y'all. It is what it is there. Employees were also told they'd be receiving a lower percentage of their profit-sharing bonuses for 2022. So a couple of big L's for employees right out of the gate. People also mentioned that, hey, didn't we break profit records this past quarter? And yes, that is true. They broke profit records for Q4, but they're still getting a lesser profit sharing percentage for last year. So there was a lot of stuff that people were upset about. Mike Ybarra also addressed the stack ranking systems that determine employees' compensation, bonuses, all of that, and basically said, if you think that executives are, this is a rough quote, if you think that executives are making a lot of money and you aren't, you are living in a myth. So, like I said, a lot of the phrasing of this, regardless of what was said in the context of the situation, combative, very hostile towards employees, and that's not a way to de-escalate concerns. He also claimed that QA was, quote, not a long-term discipline and should be treating as a stepping stone for more, quote, prestigious roles. So downplaying Q&A, downplaying profit sharing, forcing people to come back to the office. Oh, man, a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
But we don't have the entirety of the conversation. We have what's been reported on. We have obviously disgruntled employees speaking on the matter. That's who's talking about this. But that being said, how are these developments sitting with you?
Not surprising, but not too well. This is something that is just happening across the board in the US is as we move further and further away from COVID, companies want to return more and more to a pre-COVID work environment.
Yeah.
Even though the workforce says, "Hey, I feel better mentally working at home." There are some, that's a whole other conversation. Like there are so many factors that go into that, but people have like, this is their new normal, a work from home environment or a hybrid, whatever it is. That's what people are used to. And as Americans, we're in that rhythm. So being thrown back into, hey, you have to be in the office all the time. Like it's almost like COVID again, like back when people were forced to go remote. Now you're forced to, like, it's the same thing. You're ripping people out of this norm. That on top, like, and it was just all these things like stacked together. Talking about the profit sharing, talking about QA, which that blows my mind. I just saw somebody the other day who was talking about how like they've always wanted to be in QA. Like that is what their aspirations are. And I think those are great aspirations. So to hear that statement of QA is not a long-term discipline, that it's a stepping stone to more prestigious roles, I'm like, that's just crapping on people that have that job, but then also who like that's what they want to do.
Yeah, so you're gonna come out in front of hundreds of people in that department and say that department isn't something you should invest in, essentially.
Yeah, it's just not a good look, and no, not about it.
No, it's unfortunate. And again, like
Hmm.
I without all the context, I'm I try to be careful with how I phrase things. But when you're
Hmm.
a leader, when you're a Mike Ybarra figure, you, regardless of how you feel, you can't come out and downplay your employees in this way. You
Hmm.
fundamentally can't. That is not the sign of a great leader. That's the sign of a frustrated leader. That is the sign of a leader who is beholden to shareholders, and that is a line. The comments of a shareholder or of a leader who has to answer to someone other than employees, and that's why he's being so hostile. That's why he's being so
Hmm.
combative, and that's why he's downplaying this entire discipline. It's really frustrating that any leadership position is going to tell you that one position is lesser than another, because this creates this mental trap where you can then justify, okay, we don't need to pay them that much, we don't need to worry about them sticking around, because it's a stepping stone to what's next. And I come from a corporate background. I climbed the corporate ladder in sales and marketing, and I heard that rhetoric constantly. They would justify shitty hours, they would justify horrible pay, they would justify all of these things because that role was a stepping stone to what comes next. And if you just endure, if you just suffer through that, then you can make the next step. And then one day you can be me. One day you can be Mike Ybarra, and you can come out on stage and say that your role doesn't matter, dude, but don't worry. Someday, if you grind it out, you can be me. And that's the mental trap that they try to catch people in. And it's bogus. I'm sorry. Not everyone can be or will be Mike Ybarra. Yes, sure, one
Yeah.
person someday, 10, 15, 20 years will be, and you can move up the ladder. But there are people who want to be good and satisfied with what they do. And I don't think that's a problem. This idea that you have to be the best, you have to be better than everyone else in the world to have a livable wage is absurd, and we all fall into it, and we're all made to feel guilty for not giving everything that we have, our entire lives, our happiness, everything, just to make this company money. And that's what it is.
Hmm.
They want you to give everything that you can possibly give so that someone else can make decent money. Not you. God, no, not you. Somebody else is going to be making decent money. And that's where I take a little bit of a problem with this situation
Hmm.
here. And sure, that's my, maybe my hippy dippy nature, but man, just treat your people better. I feel like it's not that hard.
Hmm. And I've read a few like Brene Brown books and talking about leadership and the workforce and things like that. And one thing that's always like really stuck out to me is you really want to take care of like the entire person. Like, don't look at your employee or your coworker as a digit or just a faceless entity. Like, we are people. And as soon as you start addressing the person in their entirety, then you're going to get those happy workers. And so just, thinking about the aspect of being shot down for what you do, I'm like, that is the antithesis of that whole idea of like taking care of the entire person. No, 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 no. Let's go back to the beginning, and what you do, that's a joke. I'm like,
Do you think that's going
there,
to help morale? Like, I'm sorry, in what world does that inspire
yeah,
any boost in productivity or morale?
yeah. Not even talking about the stock stuff, not even talking about going into the office. That would be like you shouldn't have said that, period. And everything else that came after that or is a part of that is like a wash because you said that.
Exactly. You're coming out hostile. You're immediately setting the tone as negative for this entire thing. And another thing, we are more than our jobs. Like this
Hmm.
idea in the US that your career is who you are. You can be excited about your career. You can be passionate. You can invest in your career. There's nothing wrong with that. But this idea that you are only your job is so unfortunate. And there are people who just want to work and be content. And I think that's fine.
Hmm.
That should be okay. And for a lot of
Hmm.
these businesses, who need this internal return, this just ever growing return on investment, that's not enough. And it sucks for people. And I feel
Hmm.
for people in the QA team who've been there for years and invested all this time and energy to have someone come out and say like, yeah, that's a waste. The fact that you're
Hmm.
doing this is a waste, even though you are fundamental to us shipping games, and we've gotten a lot of flack for our games being buggy and broken. Your department is a waste. Like
Yeah.
yikes, dude. So yeah, obviously people are upset about that, and I think understandably so. We don't have
Hmm.
all of the context, but we have enough context to know that this was not handled well. This was not
Yeah.
handled in a way that was going to de-escalate. Do you think
No.
the in-office mandate is going to bite them in the ass?
Um, I can't comment too much about that. But I can just say when it comes to an office, work from home, I really do think that a hybrid because I get where they're coming from. Like, if we've got butts in seats, productivity is going to increase. I know that there's that fear of that. What are people actually doing at home? If they're
Hmm.
working, like, I think about, back when I worked at a marketing firm, and it was like right as COVID was happening. We had laptops that we took home, and I found like I could carry my laptop everywhere. When I go to the bathroom, when I'm going to the kitchen, get something to eat, everywhere I'm going, I brought my laptop with me so I could keep working. I was way more plugged in, getting way more work done than when I was in the office. Like, like, I don't know if you've worked in like a big marketing firm where like there's ping pong tables and basketball hoops and all these common areas. And I'm like, I'm not going on walks and just hanging out with my coworkers anymore, like burning all this time. I'm just like plugged in. So even the argument of productivity, I feel like it could go either way. It almost is like, it feels like an arbitrary thing, or I'm not going to say a fear tactic. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's more of like, it, if I can't see you in your seat, I don't know what you're doing, kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't trust you. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
giving you money and I don't trust you, and is basically what you're saying is.
I
And
mean, but that's what it can come off as. Like, if I'm running a business and I don't see that you're working, like, I need to see that proof. You know what I mean? Like, I need to know that you're doing what you're doing. And the easiest way to do that is if I can actually see you at your desk. You know what I mean? Versus like, if we're remote and I have no idea what your whole day looks like, and now we got to figure out all these ways for you to tell me what you're doing, kind of thing. It's a lot less steps than someone sitting in a chair next to you down the hall.
yeah, and I think it's kind of this old school mentality, and I do agree that there is probably some data that suggests, all right, yeah, in office work it's X% done. There's also data that suggests the exact opposite, that people are more productive at home, and there are, outside of just staring at someone for an 8-hour shift, there are other metrics and ways to quantify productivity, and a lot of companies
Hmm.
have figured those out. And I think as we've seen with this recent development, a lot of developers and publishers are saying, work with us, come work for us. We're hiring remotely. And so I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, okay, peace. And they're going to lose a lot of high ranking people, because I think as we go on and we, as we move away from the traditional work model, a lot of people realize that they are happier working from home. They have no desire ever to go back to work from office. And a lot of companies are just facilitating that because they want to keep happy people around. And a lot of happy, passionate people are not going back to the office. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out for them, and if they'll maybe backpedal a little bit and at least offer some hybrid roles. Because if they go 100% in office, I think they're going to have a little purge of personnel, to be honest.
Yeah, burnout can be pretty high if you're unhappy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what's going on with Activision Blizzard. And yeah, it's again, that's one of the main reasons I want this deal to go through, outside of the, being able to play games in Game Passes.
Yeah.
I hope that on the other side of this, there is a better quality of life and a better standard of work for everyone at Activision Blizzard, because the last several years, all we've heard about is just negative developments from these
Yes.
companies. And it's at a certain point, we got to say, all right, things have to change. All right. We can't just
Hmm.
keep turning a blind eye every single time and say, well, I just like Call of Duty, so I don't really give a damn what goes into how the sausage is made, as they say.
Yeah.
I know it's easier. Trust me. I know it's so much easier to say, I don't care, and then just go about my day. But
Yep.
at a certain point, we gotta say something. Otherwise, it's gonna get bad for all of us here. So yeah,
Hmm.
I
We
champion
gotta.
these guys. I hope that their lives are a little bit better.
Yeah.
All right, we got a few more minutes here before you got to get on out of here. So there's one game I want to talk about, and there's a game, you're seeing it on the screen, and that is Wanted Dead. All right, this game dropped this week. It did not drop to critical acclaim. I think it's sitting at it's a 58 on Metacritic. Gotten a
Hmm.
lot of I would say objectively bad reviews. People have a lot of complaints with this game. Um I have been playing this game, and I am of the mindset that this is the next Deadly Premonition. where it is not a great game. It's not a game I'm going to tell you to rush out and buy at $60. It's not a game I'm even going to tell you is a fantastic game or even a good game, but I have not laughed so hard in such a long time playing this game. Holy damn, it has got some of the best, worst dialogue ever. Let me pull it up here. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I made a little Twitter thread with some of the dialogue from this game, and it's, oh my god, it's pure joy. So I'm gonna play some here for you. So I'll give you context as I play these here, so you get an idea of what's going on. So this clip here, you know, we're confronting the main villain. He's grabbing your hair, he's pulling your back. He says, "Don't make me hurt you."
Don't make me hurt you. Hope you've got your coffin pre-ordered. Don't make.
So it's kind of hard to hear because it's so muffled, but after the main villain says, "Don't make me hurt you," you can hear one of the other henchmen say, "I hope you got your coffin pre-ordered." And I couldn't believe it, dude. I was sitting there alone, laughing to myself because of how outrageous that line was. "I hope you got your coffin pre-ordered" is one of the greatest lines in any video game ever. And the delivery, I'll play it one more time so you can really appreciate it. The delivery is unbelievable.
Don't make me hurt you.
Listen for it.
Hope you've got your coffin pre-ordered.
Hope you got your coffin pre-ordered. Like, oh my god, dude, it's incredible. The game is a real treat. So again, it's a hard recommend at 60 for everyone. And it's not going to be a game for everyone, but if you like cheesy B movies, if you like terrible dialogue, if you like dumb action, oh my god, dude. If you haven't seen any of the game, I got a bunch of it on Twitter. I also have a short on the YouTube channel that's just a compilation of some of the best dialogue that I found in the game. If that doesn't sell you on it, if you watch that and say, "This isn't for me," then okay, that's fair. The game will not be for you. If you don't find entertainment in what I showed you just there, don't play the game. I'll just say that. I'll just say that. The combat is fine, but there's a lot of problems with the game. But if you watch that dialogue and you said, "Okay, now we're on to something," you will have a great time. Asa, how you feeling about that? Is that something that you would play based on what I've shown?
Okay, so I mean, disclaimer, I do have a wonderful gift box with a grenade and a cookbook, and what else was in that?
Oh yeah, you got some vinyl, you got the CD, yeah,
I got the vinyl. So thank you very much for sending that to me. I haven't started it yet. I'm sorry, but that does make me want to start the game, because I love that B movie style of game. I feel like nowadays a game is either like it has to be like a AAA or an indie darling. Like it's got to be a 10 out of 10 or it's garbage. I'm like, where are the days of the shovelware and the mid-range AA games that we were all playing and loving? Like, you know, I joked about Blinks earlier, but like Blinks fundamentally is not like the greatest game, but I have like the best memories with it. And looking at some older Xbox games, like looking at Brute Force or Azaric or Vex.
Yes, some classics right there, dude.
These games today, oh my gosh, they would crash and burn. The writing is bad, like the mechanics are not great, but there's just something endearing about them being like, stop, what are you doing? Like, and that actor is acting his little heart out with that terrible delivery, and you can't help but admire it and all its quirkiness. So knowing that the dialogue is awful but hilarious, even though the action is repetitive, that's a great like game to just like zone out and play. I will finish opening up that gift package and I'm gonna be playing this game. And I don't care that it's not great. I don't need it to be a 10 out of 10. I just need to have fun.
Exactly. This reminds me of the glory days where I would go to a like Blockbuster Video back when you could rent video games. And I would go there and just look at a game and rent it entirely based on the cover. I would look at the cover, I would look at the description on the back and say, yeah, let's go. And I would take it home and play it. And some of that was terrible, but some of those experiences were just so joyous because of how cheesy and weird they were. And it just reminds me of that era. There's one particular scene in a nightclub in this game, and you're fighting like 40 bouncers at the same time. Every single bouncer is the same voice actor, and they all say voice lines. So you're just getting hit with this wall of the exact same guy. You don't know who it's coming from, where it's coming from. The lines of dialogue overlap. So you'll have 5 or 6 lines of dialogue playing at the same time. It is magical, all right? It's something that takes me back to an era where, we live in this time where, yeah, like you said, everything needs to be a banger. Everything needs to be the best, or I don't bother with it. And that's fine. We only have a finite amount of time, so I understand that mentality. But also, there is some value, there is some fun that can be had with some of these weird, obscure games. And I don't want to see that space lost. All right, I do want to see that space continue to shine. And this game, like I said, will not be for everyone. But if you appreciate Deadly Premonition, check us out. There's you will have some fun.
And I want to give one last parting word to this game. Like you talked about, like all that dialogue coming in at one time. A AAA developer, you all might know them. They're called Bethesda. They put out this game called Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and it is applauded as one of the greatest games in all of Xbox history. If it wasn't there, like Skyrim wouldn't be a thing. Anyways, there are plenty of instances where you would enter a shop and you would exit the shop in Cyrodiil, and oh my gosh, that game had 5 voice actors, and those 5 voice actors would do tiny little changes to their voice but every once in a while you would get 4 guards standing in the same spot, voiced by the same guy. You leave that potion shop and you hear, like everyone's talking at one time, and it's the same guy. Listen, if you can play Elder Scrolls and enjoy that nonsense there, you can play this and enjoy it here.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much that. Again, I know I'm not going to tell you it's a masterpiece. It's not. It has so many problems, but I am not exaggerating when I am saying I have not laughed so hard while playing a game in such a long time. It is, oh God. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Asa, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you hanging out. Again, huge shout out to your daughter on her first birthday. Can we get a happy birthday from the chat? Love that. I know you got the bounce house going. I know you got that all set up. So I know you got to get back to that party. But before you go, one more time, let everyone know where they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at AGreenRiver07. You can follow any of my content, Borderline Entertainment, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Twitch, Twitter as well. But Twitter, you really need to look out for me. And honestly, that's the best place. If you want to stay tuned as to when I'm putting out content, plug into those 3 locations and you're in it. Also, yes, I will be showing this episode to my baby girl when she gets older. So Violet, happy first birthday. I love you so much. This episode is dedicated to you from your daddy.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Appreciate you, man. It was awesome. This was our first time getting to have a lengthier chat. So I appreciate you hanging out.
Love it.
Had a good time. We had some great conversations. Appreciate everyone in the chat having some constructive conversations. I know we touched on some heavier subjects, so I appreciate you keeping it civil. Appreciate you having those conversations. And until next time, have a fantastic weekend, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.